Morning, Boston buddies. How's everybody doing today? Welcome to Brunch with Boston Buddies. It's May 14th. Today we have two guests again. We have Greg Meyer, 1983 Boston Marathon champion, as well as 1982 Chicago Marathon champion. Welcome, Greg. How are you?
Good. Good to be here.
And then we have this guy named Bart Yasso. A lot of you guys might know him. How's it going, Bart?
Going all right, Vince. Happy to be part of your program again.
Yeah, we love having you. We were just chatting. Thanks for doing that virtual or the meeting the other night with Meb. That was great.
Yeah, it seemed to be pretty popular. So keep doing the Zoom calls. Now we got to get Greg to join us a couple more times because he's got amazing stories and he's got an unbelievable runner in his day. Unbelievable.
Well, that's what he's here for today, to shed some light and give everybody some potentially on what they need to do to become a 209 marathoner.
Yeah.
So Greg, how are you doing? You're in Michigan, correct?
I'm in Michigan. Yep. Sitting in my office at Metro Health Hospital, looking out at a rainy but finally a little bit of a warm day.
Nice. And how's your hospital doing with everything that's going on these days?
We're holding up okay in terms of we haven't been hit with a huge surge like some of the major metropolitan areas. Obviously, we prepared for like we would, but what's really been the hard part is the economic impact on hospitals all across the country. They just took a financial beat. Everybody thinks, well, if people are getting sick, you're making money. No, we had to shut everything down in preparation for what might happen. So all of your surgeries and electives and all those things just have been canceled. So it's a real adjustment. We've had to, furlough people because we just don't have the work right now.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a bunch of nurses and a doctor on the other day on our program, and they were saying similar things where, these elective or so-called elective surgeries and screenings aren't getting done, and it's hurting the hospitals. And it's actually causing problems just because people who need cancer screenings. My wife is waiting to go get a screening. She's been waiting since March and she can't get it. It's a shame. I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, people aren't going to the doctors. People aren't getting their kids vaccinated in a normal time frame. They're not filling their prescriptions because everybody's staying at home. They're not going out. And I mean, I get it, but it's really created sort of a challenge within the healthcare industry, and not only for the hospitals, but for the patients and the people. Yeah.
Well, hopefully we get this figured out soon and we're all back running. Hopefully by September 14th, we're all back out there in Boston.
Oh
again.
boy.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Same here.
We've got a few people that are already chiming in on the comments here. We've got Gary Finelli saying hello to both of you.
Yeah.
Oh, tell Gary I said hi.
That's awesome.
And then what we normally ask people to do on the show is do what's called an intro video. So we asked them what made you want to start running? Like, did you start early in your career? Were you a high school, college runner? And what made you run?
I was in other sports in grade school, basketball, football, all those things. And as I got towards 7th or 8th grade, I mean, I was too slow to be a sprinter. And in grade school, the longest race we had was back then, 220 yards. Now it'd be 200 meters. But I was always good at the fitness part of it. When they actually made you run laps for fitness, those were the things I excelled at. So in 8th grade, I had actually broken my thumb playing football. So I wasn't doing anything other than standing around at practice, annoying the coaches. When one of them told me, why don't you run 2 miles and we'll time you? So in my blue jeans and high top Converse, I went out and ran 2 miles in a little over 11 minutes. And he looked at me and he goes, when you get to high school, there's a sport for idiots like you. It's called cross country. So that sort of began my journey towards running long distances. So, did the typical thing, ran in high school, was lucky enough to do good enough, to win a few state championships, and then really fortunate to have gotten a scholarship to the University of Michigan. And a year after I got there, had a fabulous coach show up in the name of a person of Ron Warhurst, who's had numerous Olympians, numerous national champions, just a terrific guy. So just got lucky in that regard. Had the right people around me to keep me moving along, and Ron was one of those people.
So you ran the first time you ran 2 miles in under 12 minutes without any practice, nothing?
Pretty much, yeah. I remember it was on a cinder track, 10 laps to a mile. The football team was practicing, and they had me run. And he goes, yeah, there's a sport for guys like you. So, yeah.
They didn't make you the running back.
No, that's what I was. And that's how I broke my thumb. I got tackled with somebody's helmet, hit my hand when it was on the ball, and broke my thumb in a couple of places.
Wow.
We're glad you switched to running.
Right.
Happy that you did that.
Right.
So am I, actually.
So you, the early 80s was obviously a great time for you. You won Chicago. You won Chicago first, right? Can you tell us a little bit about the Chicago experience? Like it was a much smaller race back then, I would imagine.
It was a smaller race. It was the first race that went big, to try to compete with New York at the time. You remember the race director back then was Bob Bright, who was sort of the master promoter at the time. I had been running well going in, and had reconnected with Bill Squires to coach me for my marathon efforts. Previous to that, Bob Sebney was helping me out, but then he went to Athletics West. And this was after I had moved to Boston to train with Billy and the Greater Boston Track Club. So as we got ready for Chicago, Squires, wanted me to play it conservative. This was my first big marathon. I had won Detroit going into this, the year before, but, he wanted me to, not do anything crazy. So, I remember the strategy. And just so you know, when you trained with Bill, I never remembered him talking about running a time. It was always about how you were going to race the people in the event, so where you would make your move, how you would respond to different things, the tactics of it. And his tactic for me going into Chicago was, I don't want you to take the lead until 20 miles. He said, I want you to just sit and wait and be in the pack. So I did, but nobody told Joe Zhao, who took off and had, at one point I thought he had over a minute lead on the pack. And in the old days, the coaches knew how to do these things. Squires was on the press truck, and I kept looking at him going, when can we go? When can we go? And finally we hit 20 miles, and he said, all right, if you feel good, go. And Dave Edge, the great Canadian marathoner, and I took off in pursuit of Joe Zhao, and I ended up reeling him in at about 23, between 23 and 24 miles, and then got away from him just after that. So, it was Squires getting me ready for that one, and then Boston the next spring.
Yeah, Joe Zhao was one of the early Kenyan runners to race in the U.S. He was a great runner, tough guy.
Great remember, the old days, Mike Musioki, Joe Zhao, all those guys, they were fabulous.
They were fabulous runners, but there wasn't the quantity of Kenyans that run in the U.S. today. but the ones that
because
they were fast.
I mean, the big money really hadn't come to the marathon yet. The big money for most distance runners was still on the track in Europe. So if you were a great Kenyan runner, and you were lucky enough to have gone to college or hit some times, your goal was to get to Europe and make some money on the track, not here.
Yeah.
Obviously, the marathon changed all that.
Right.
Yeah, we had Paul Cariccio on the other day, and he just wrote a book about Billy Squires and some of the things that he was doing with his runners. He was talking about how he'd get in his car and you guys would have to chase him in his car, and as soon as you got him, he'd go faster or something to try and teach him first.
He was a character. I mean, and I get Squires was interesting. When I first moved to Boston, the training that the Greater Boston Track Club was doing with Billy and Randy Thomas and Bob Hodge was more the long, slow distance stuff, slow intervals at marathon pace. And I came up with Warhurst, where when you went, to do intervals, you were hitting intervals hard, and you did hard hill work and hill repeats. I didn't flourish under Billy at the beginning. I got really stale, and after a period of time, I left and went back to the training methods that Ronnie had given me and worked with Bob Sevney, who was more aligned with, track guys that, like to get on the track and run hard.
Mm-hmm.
When I went back to Bill, before the marathon, we sat down. He understood what got me ready, both physically and mentally. And he did an amazing job of adapting his program to what worked for me. So we still stayed with hard track workouts. I still got to do my hill repeats. The long runs, he incorporated fartlek runs into them. That really gave you this surging mentality through the course of a training run. So he really did change things up, that second time around, which I think was what allowed me to do well, in a few marathons. And again, I always remind people, I was not a pure marathoner. I happened to do well in a few of them, but had I stuck to between, 10K and 30K, I probably would have had a longer and more fruitful career. But no regrets in terms of the 2 marathons that I did win.
Right.
Okay, Greg, you had some amazing records at 10 miles, 20K, I believe, 15K.
Yeah, I mean, at one point I had, I think, the American record from everything from 8K to 25K.
Yeah.
So that was my sweet spot, and it didn't mean I was going to win every race, but I got to the point where I had enough confidence when I was fit that if I wasn't going to win, I could make somebody at least hurt to try to beat me. So, and it was a great era for running, with Herb Lindsay and Bill Rogers and, the sprinkling of Kenyans that were in there. And then Rob DiCostello showing up on the scene now and then. It was just a great time to be a road racer.
Yeah, I was telling Vince, Greg, 1983 Boston Marathon, your big win. I mean, that was the heyday of marathon running in America. 84 guys in the race broke 2:20 in the marathon. 84. This is with 6,000 runners in the race. Compared to 2019 with over 30,000, only 28 runners broke 2:20.
Yeah. And when you look at is that 28 Americans or 28 total?
28 total. So,
yeah.
In 83, 76 of the top 84 runners were from the U.S.
Yeah. It was, that 82, 83 in that time frame, to me, was the high water mark for American distance running. We have some great talent now in Galen Rupp and some others. Dathan just retired, but I don't think we have the depth that we had back then. I mean, we were incredible back then. I mean, just look at how many guys, broke 2:10 back in '83 and how many break 2:10 now.
Unbelievable. And then for us regular folks like me, there were, it was almost 2,650 broke 3 hours. 60 women broke 3 hours that day. Back with only 550 women in the race, 60 women broke 3 hours in 83, which that was just the start of it. I mean, Joni was first and Jacqueline Garreau, who's done an interview with Vince, was second. And then, but the women were just coming on strong. For 60 women to break 3 hours, that was impressive.
I think it was a different sport back then, though. Anyone who was running Boston was an absolute serious runner. And now, you know, with the charity component and other things, the field has expanded. You know, there's different levels of runner now, whereas in the old days, Boston was really exclusive to the elites.
Right. And they didn't even have the vapor flies, and you guys didn't even have like water on the course or things to support you during the race.
There was some water and Gatorade out there. Nothing like what you see today, but there was a little bit of
the only water that I remember in '83 was the YMCA had a water stop at the halfway mark in Wellesley. Anything else, you were pretty much on your own to get through your own pit crew that followed you around.
Yeah, or just take it from spectators, because people would come out and hand, or at least people were handing out water and slices of oranges and stuff like that. The locals really took care of you out there back in the day. Yeah.
So, hey, I'm curious, you know, when you just brought it up, you know, this whole vapor fly. What's been the feeling, you know, when people are calling in about the legitimacy of having shoes that propel you?
Oh, I hear I see a lot of negative feedback about it, that they should be banned and be illegal. But
I think it depends on who
support it. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where it's going to come down.
Yeah, I don't think you should be allowed to set a record in them. I don't think it's apples to apples. You know, it's I mean, it's great for a storyline. It's great that, you know, some people can run faster, but I don't think it equates to, you know, remember us running in die-cut EVA with Vibram on the bottom. But, you know, it ought to be about the human power, not about the shoe power.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like in golf, you know, there's restrictions on golf clubs, you know.
Thank you. Perfect example.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's mixed. I think some people have said, you know, it's technology, you know, use technology to your advantage, but it does take away from, you know, obviously the you know, the older records and the pure runners. It does give people an advantage, obviously. Otherwise we wouldn't have it. For the everyday jogger or the everyday runner, the weekend warrior, you know, it will help them. It's not going to change them into a 2:10 marathoner, but it'll help them. But for the elites, when they can get shoes that other people can't get, I think that's where it kind of steps out of the line, where if it's restricted to who can get them and only certain people can, then obviously that shouldn't be allowed, or at least in my opinion, that shouldn't be allowed or count towards a record. But
I agree. You know, and I just don't know how you stop it now. And if you open the door to that, then, you know, it's like, okay, so maybe drugs are fine. Let people take whatever drugs they want. You know, it's just, I don't know. It opens up a whole bunch of ethical questions for me that to me, it just doesn't make the sport better. It's people chasing records, not about chasing wins.
Right.
That's true.
You come from when the sport was pure. It was really a joy to be running these big races back in the 80s. It was, people ran for the guts of it. There was nothing. I mean, when I came along, I was 30 minutes behind Greg. When I came along, all you got was stew, and, you know, they told you to get out of the garage that you were in the parking garage where we finished back then. You know, like Greg didn't run down Boylston. He ran down what was called Ring Road, and you literally it was the driveway to the Prudential parking garage.
Right.
It wasn't the glory 600 meters on Boylston that you have today.
Yeah, Greg, can you take us back maybe to that day in '83, the day you won, like in Hopkinton, when you're at the start line, you know, you're with all these great runners. Nobody knew it was going to be such a perfect day for runners, and that everybody was going to be out there running these great times. What were your thoughts at the start line when you were about to begin that race, looking around at the runners?
You know, the one thing that I always remember about Boston, and whether it was the year I won or the years I lost or the years I just ran for fun, you tingle at the starting line of Boston. It's a special place. Mm-hmm. And I remember being at the starting line, like everybody else, anxious and nervous, but also with that tingling, you know, that this is Boston. This is what the sport's about. I mean, it's just a different feeling. Squires and I had a plan, you know, that, and again, it was not about time. It was about people and keeping people honest. We knew I was really fit. You know, I'd set the world record for 10 miles a few weeks before, broke 28 minutes for 10. So I was on kind of a roll going in. He wanted me, obviously, not to do anything too early, but he said if the pace begins to slow, what he called them fakes. He said, I want you to go to the front and run hard for a little bit, get the tempo back up again, and then when the pack, you know, gathers itself and, you know, gets that rhythm going again, tuck back in. And I remember having to do that maybe once in the first half of the race, you know, and well, that after Abrahar Arrega led the first 15K wearing headphones. Do you remember that, Bart?
Yeah, like a Walkman, an old-fashioned Walkman with the big things over his ears and a Walkman in his hand.
I can still remember when we caught him at 15K.
Yes.
I think it was Benji, you know, looks over at me and he says, I think he only had a 45-minute tape in there. You know? God, it was funny, you know, but once we hit, you know, we got through Natick, Benji, you know, and into Wellesley, Benji took off. So there was no more need for surges. He broke the field apart. I mean, he went after it. We were 104, like 10 at halfway. And then he was screaming for about the next 5 miles, well under world record pace. So all I was trying to do was maintain a certain distance to him. So, you know how, and you've heard coaches, you don't want that string to be broken. You don't want someone to get so far ahead that you don't think you have a shot at reeling them back in. But at that point, when I was chasing him, the pack disintegrated. There was nobody but me looking at his backside going, okay, that's what I got to focus on. That's who I need to stay with and then catch. I give Benji such credit for the work he did that day, trying to win that race, you know, and I know others ran fast that day and broke 2:10 or broke 2:11, but nobody put themselves out there like Benji did. And, you know, it's one of the sad truths about our sport is the guy that tries to make the race usually doesn't even enjoy getting second. You know, it usually takes a burden and he gets third, fourth, or fifth. And that's what happened to Benji. And I still regret that he didn't get second. I don't regret that he didn't get first, but I regret that he didn't get second because he made the race. He really did. And, you know, it was just a matter of staying focused and reeling him in once we got to the hills of Newton.
Yeah, the top 3 guys were.
And at that time, Benji was third, I think, in 19.
He was third, yeah. And Ron
he ended up third.
Yeah. So he
still broke 2:10.
Yeah. Benji was amazing.
He broke 2:10
at the time.
Yeah, we had Ron Tab on the other day too. He talked about the race. Yeah. Ron Tab was under 2:10 as well. He came in second. And you guys were both coached by the same person.
Who's that?
Tab, Ron Tab, and Benji. Hello.
Oh, were Benji and Ron both coached by the same guy?
I'm sorry. I thought they were all part of the Greater Boston Track Club.
Oh, no.
Oh,
No,
okay.
Benji was Atlanta. Tab
Okay.
was, I think, running with Dillinger out in Oregon.
Right.
Okay.
No. And what's funny is Benji and I pretty much had a history of not getting along. But after Boston, I think those things all changed, But, Benji was an Olympian. He had a hell of a career, Tab obviously ran well that day. But, I mean, I just give all the credit that day to Benji, and I kind of wish that we would have stayed running together longer. I got away just before Heartbreak. Had he stayed in it for a little bit longer, I think we'd have run another 30, 40 seconds faster.
Yeah. So you ran from Heartbreak to the finish in the lead, if I remember correctly.
Just before Heartbreak. I got away between the second hill and Heartbreak. And I was still running, I was still on pretty good pace until 23 miles. And I still remember this. One of the media guys, and I don't remember who it was, on the press truck. And you remember those days where there was no crowd control. So the crowd would come out. It was like a snake swallowing a rat. It would open up and let you come through, then close in behind you.
Yeah.
And at 23 miles, I was looking behind to see who was coming because I just thought somebody has to come, and in my mind, it was probably Billy, although he still broke 2:11 that day, but I think he was 8th. But I kept looking behind to see if anybody was coming. And somebody on the press truck yelled, "Relax, there's nobody coming." I had about a minute lead, I guess, at about 23. And subconsciously, when your whole goal is to win and you take that edge off, that little bit of fear off, I went and all of a sudden now I'm running 5:20s for the last 3 miles and, but happy, but I wish he wouldn't have said that. I might have run faster.
Right. Now,
yeah, but you've got that classic win, man. That was an unbelievable day. And then, of course, for Joni to win.
Go ahead, Bart.
Okay. Yeah, and I said for Joni to win was a big deal for, back then, American running.
Again, it's like you said, it was the high water mark of American distance running. Joni that day just crushed she was 1:08 at halfway. She was right behind us. She was screaming. And, Joni and I have been friends for a long time, even before this Boston. In fact, in 81, she stayed at our house before the marathon that year. Slept over the night before, and then we dropped her off at the course. To have her win the same day was just terrific. And we ended up having our celebration parties at the same restaurant, the top of the Prue, that night. So it was, you couldn't have written a better script for the day in terms of, Joni and myself and all the people that we were around. It was just, it's provided great memories.
Yeah. And then I've got a comment here from Rob Freed. Rob Freed ran that day. That was his PR. He's one of the founders of our group as well. He said, bring up that Greg got the Seiko clock and Ron got the trophy from the BAA. He said there's a funny story behind that.
Yeah, somebody had to piss me off. Tom Grilk and I are good friends, the executive director of the BAA, and I still whine to him. I say, yeah, all these guys got these great unicorn trophies, and I got a freaking Seiko clock. Now, granted, it's a nice clock, and I still have it, and it still works, but it's a clock. There's a little tiny plaque on top that says Boston Marathon winner on it. But to me, the unicorn is the most recognizable figure or logo in marathoning, and second for me would probably be the Honolulu Marathon, Hawaiian runner that's on their chest.
Right. They've had that same logo for years.
Yeah. Everybody knows the unicorn in the Boston Marathon logo. Everybody. I got a clock. I didn't even get the cup of stew that day, but I just tease Tom about it all the time. It's just one of those things, but I'm proud of my clock. And to Seiko's credit, all these years later, it still works.
There you go.
That's hilarious.
Greg, you talk about a lot when you won that race. You really feel your consistent training, not only like the 3 months or 4 months leading up to the race, but the year before and the year before that, building your base. That is really what gave you that, to be able to run that fast.
I go back to what Bill Rogers told me. And again, there's certain things that you can play back in your mind and you remember where you were when somebody said something. And I remember Billy and I were running around Cleveland Circle, the reservoir there. And he asked me how I was adapting to the training because it was different. And I said, so far so good. And I remember him saying, it's not what you do in a day or a week or a month. It's how many months and years you can string together that makes you strong. When I won Boston, I'd averaged almost 100 miles a week for 7 years. So, people forget that in 81, I ran Boston and got my butt kicked by Seiko and Billy and Craig Virgin. I took the lead at 18 miles and then they went by me by 19 miles, like I was one of the light posts out there. So, you learn what it takes to gain that strength. And it took me 2 more years after that Boston experience to feel like I had the strength to do what I wanted to do. But Billy was so right. It's one of the things I've always told the kids when I was coaching at the high school or college level. It's about adding layers of strength. You're not going to do it all at once. You add layers of strength. Over the years, I was able to do that. And I was lucky enough to be healthy most of those years. So I didn't have any major, setbacks of being off for 6 or 8 weeks at a time. I was kind of a plow horse. I kept going, I didn't get hurt that often.
Yeah, and you guys race more often than the elite runners, American runners these days. I mean, you got, when the circuit happened, the old Red Lobster race and Gasparilla and, on a Cherry Blossom, you guys went out there and raced. I shared my training log leading into Boston with somebody years ago, and they put it online. I mean, there was one year, must have been 81 or 82. I raced 22 weekends in a row. I think I won 19 and maybe got second in 2. That's why you trained. You trained to race. Now, you don't need to race every weekend, but, we thought racing was fun. I think there's a real disadvantage to the guys training and racing today is they focus in on 1 or 2 things a year and you never see them. And I don't know. I think it does the sport a disservice, but I think it also hurts them. I think there's more risk of getting hurt by training nonstop than forcing yourself every now and then to back off and race. Squires always believed that you needed to get race hard. You had to go out and race people to get that toughness in you again. I don't think you get that in training, just running against the clock.
I agree.
You get too many guys out there now, or I shouldn't say guys, too many athletes now, very content to, I ran a fast time. Yeah, but you got 9th, When did you learn how to race? And, I'll get on my soapbox now, but it goes all the way back to the colleges. They don't run scoring meets anymore. You're not asked to race somebody to score points. It's all about trying to qualify for nationals, and you're running a bunch of frickin' time trials. I think people in our era knew how to race.
Yeah, it's a different mentality. It sounds like
different mentality.
You were coached that way too, though. From Billy, it sounds like it was. You weren't racing the clock. You were racing.
Yeah. Bill Rogers never ran for time. Maybe he did when he did his like 30 kilometers on the track to try to set the world record. But when he was in a race, whether it was Boston, Fukuoka, New York, it was only about beating the competition. He'd crush you in the middle and coast home. Didn't really care about the time. He only cared about the win. And that was most of the people back then. They just wanted to win.
You didn't have the GPS. You didn't have all the analytics that we have today, and GPS and analyze every stride length and your elevation and all this other stuff. That doesn't necessarily mean so much. You got to win.
You got to win. I mean, yeah, you know, there were 2 races where had I not gotten beat, I would have set the world record, but both of them were at Gasparilla in the 15K. One year it was Mike Musioki, and another year it was Rob DiCostella. Nobody remembers that you got second, even though you may have set the guy ahead of you broke the world record.
Right. We're actually having Billy Rogers on Monday on the show.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Now, there was
great influence.
Race. I mean, you raced, like you said, you raced all different distances. There was in 1978, you ran a cross country, the U.S. Amateur cross country race against Alberto Salazar, and you came in first in that one. Can you tell us a little bit about that race and what that was like?
Oh, that was a mess. It had snowed a little bit the night before in Seattle, which they probably aren't used to. But anyway, I was fairly fit coming in. Alberto was coming off. I don't know if he won the NCAAs the week before or if he got. I can't remember what it was.
He won in '79.
Okay, but he ran well the week before at the NCs. We were hoping that he would run with the Greater Boston Track Club because obviously he's from Boston and he's part of the club, but he ran with the Oregon team that day. Anyway, we're running along and we had broken away and we're coming up to an intersection. The course crisscrossed and there was a volunteer that was standing there, a deer in the headlights. And I remember us looking at it and go, which way? And the person pointed the wrong way on the course. So we turned, and lucky enough, the race director saw the mistake and was able to just reroute us once we got done with this loop so that we did the whole thing. But it's like, where are we going now? We were doing different surges, until about, maybe a half a mile from the finish line. And I remember talking with Al, and I can't remember who brought it up. It's, well, maybe we should just tie. And then, okay, because it was goofy. And then we got about 600 meters out, and Alberto goes, we probably shouldn't do that. And I said, yeah, you're right. And it was literally, I think it was like 1, 2, 3, go, and for a sprint. And I was able to nudge out Alberto at the end for the win. So I can't remember who was third in that race. Virgin might have been back there somewhere. We still ran fairly fast, and it was amazing that the loop that we went wrong on, they were actually able to reroute us so that we ran the full 10K distance. But yeah, it was one of those humorous things.
Yeah, and I was wrong. 79 was at Lehigh University, and that was Rono beating Salazar in the NCAA.
Yep.
That was 79. That was an incredible race.
Yeah. I'll tell you, the following year, Alberto did run with the Greater Boston Track Club, and it was down in North Carolina. And we went down there with the intention of winning the meet. And there was a lot of chatter between the Colorado Track Club and the Atlanta Track Club about who was going to win and this and that. And we went down and we just spanked everybody. We went 1, 3, 4, 5, 11 for 25 points, lowest point total ever at a national championship like that. It was Alberto first. That doggone Herb Lindsay broke us up. Danny Dillon, I think, was third. Haji was fourth. I was fifth. Steve Scott got sixth right behind me. And I believe Randy Thomas was 11th for us back there. I mean, just an incredible day. when you think about a team performance.
Yeah, I remember Pete Fitzinger saying he lived on a street right off of Heartbreak Hill, and on his little 2 blocks, there were 3 runners on that street that broke 45 minutes for 10 miles.
What?
So if you wanted to go out for a run,
right?
Who would that have been, Greg? Like Randy Thomas, maybe, and Fitz, and
they probably wouldn't have broke 45 minutes, but they probably would have broke 47.
They 45 and break 46.
Kevin Ryan from New Zealand was there.
Kevin Ryan.
Charlie Spedding lived just on the other side of Heartbreak Hill. Randy Thomas and we were living up in Wellesley, so we were all right on the course. I mean, and again, that was a huge advantage running Boston for all of us, is all of our long runs were on the course. I mean, we knew that course like the back of our hand.
Yeah, that's definitely a course that it helps to know it. That's when you race that course. You come down so there's a couple of races that you have coming up too, right? You have your hospital is organizing a virtual 5K in July.
Yeah, normally it's a regular 5K, 10K. We've cut it back to a 5K this year because of the COVID crisis, and it's going to be a virtual run. So you have 72 hours. It's July 16th, which is a Thursday. We usually used to have it on a Thursday night, which was interesting in and of itself. But if you run your 5K within 72 hours and register, if you beat my time, I'll donate $1 to the hospital, up to $500. And I'm going to get some other people to donate against that same challenge so that we can raise some money for the foundation here at the hospital. And then our Riverbank run, the Amway Riverbank run, which is the U.S. 25K championship, we postponed from May and moved it to October 24th. So we'll have that coming up in the fall, right after, Boston and Chicago and New York. It'll be interesting because obviously with all of those marathons crammed into the fall, the long distance talent will probably be chewed up with those marathons. But for a lot of people, it's just important to keep that thing going.
Yeah. And just to set the gauge here for people that might want to join that virtual race, what's your 5K time?
Yeah, there you go. I wanted to ask that. That's all.
Well, I'm just trying to start back. I've had an Achilles problem for almost 2 months. So between the COVID and the not running, I've gained a few pounds. My guess is I'm going to be around the 30-minute barrier, somewhere in there by then. So it should not be a challenge to take my money.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great.
So, and again, for those people listening, it's the Metro Health 5K in Grand Rapids, Michigan, July 16th. I don't know if it's $20 or $30 to sign up, and we'll send you a T-shirt and your medal afterwards. And we'll post, it's all based on, your Strava or however you do your timing. You send that in and we score it. So as all virtual runs have been doing this spring.
Yeah, virtual runs they're the rage right now. Something we never really heard of, and now they're the rage.
Yep.
Hey,
yeah. I just want to give the website out, metrohealth.net. I just did a Google on it, metrohealth.net, and you can find information about the race there and sign up.
So a lot of Boston buddies, I'm sure, have heard Greg's voice before, because Greg, you've been doing finish line announcing at Boston.
Yeah, in 2014, the year after the bombing, Tom Grilk, who is the executive director, had always done the finish line announcing, but he was having other duties since 2014 was a fairly significant event given the events of the year before. So he asked if I would want to do it, and along with Dan Roach, a local TV sportscaster. And we've been doing it ever since. And the thrill of that first year was being able to see Meb be the first American since me to win. It's been just an honor to be at the finish line. talking about the race. It's best seat in the house.
Yeah, you do a great job at it. Last couple of times I was at the finish line, you were bringing people in, but I always say you're a little partial when a runner's from Michigan that finishes. They get a little, Greg's voice goes up a little bit, the excitement goes up a little bit when us schmucks from Pennsylvania go by, it drops down the tone. I love it.
Well, you know what? We're all homers in our own way, you know.
That's the truth.
So and thank God if you're from Grand Rapids, we'll certainly get that right.
That's awesome.
We actually have a member here. He's originally from Grand Rapids. His name's Bill Johncock. He says he thinks you ran with his father, Jerry Johncock.
I sure did.
He said
his dad was an icon around here. God, he ran. Oh shoot, forever and ever. He must have been running for 50 years here.
Wow. Yeah, he said he ran in '93 with you, or at least Bill, his son, ran in '93 with you at your 10-year anniversary.
Yep.
At Boston. Yeah. He said hi. He's actually partaking in our virtual 5K. We have a virtual 5K tournament of champions starting out this weekend.
Nice.
128 winners, and it goes on for 7 weeks, like NCAA style brackets. And we every week the winners move on. Losers go home.
No kid. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm not going to join because I'd be out the first week.
Yeah, we start this weekend. We've got some pretty good names there. I don't know who's going to win because we've got Wardian on one side. Michael Wardian is joining us.
Crazy ultra guy, Michael Wardian.
Yep, and then we've got Gene Dykes on the other side. So we age grade things. So it's your age graded time. So
you know Gene.
How about weight? How about weight? How about doing age and weight?
If we could do weight, I think I might win that too. Yeah.
Gene Dykes is a big part of this club, and he's that 70-year-old guy. Ran 254 when he was 70, and he's won his age group at Boston the last couple of years.
He did what at age 70?
He ran 254 at Jacksonville Marathon, and then he's won the 70 plus at Boston the last 3 years.
Yeah, he's got the Vaporfly, right?
No, he's just one tough dude, man. This dude is
yeah, he is.
But he's a guy who's been running 50 years, but he's taken the marathon very seriously and the longer distance stuff recently. And man, he's incredible the times he's running.
Yeah, he's a local Philly guy. He's a local Philly guy. You'll have to come into Philly one of these days and run the Broad Street run with us. That's a 10-mile race. That's your sweet spot. The largest 10-miler in the country.
It used to be my sweet spot. Oh Lord. No. Boy, I'm just hoping that we're able to get back to having events again, because I know just for people's sanity, we miss it. There's that sense of community that runners have is just incredible, and I can't wait to have the roads opened up again for races.
I agree.
Yeah, this is what this group is all about. This group is very philanthropic and very community and really engage with each other and support each other. And you're right, Greg. That's, it's not just about the racing. It really is about the people and the camaraderie. And, we like each other. I mean, we battle it out on that day, but we like each other.
Right. We've actually got some trash talking going on right now that we have this tournament. It's good to see.
That is, I like that.
We've got Marty Clark as one of our members, and Fitz Kohler. I'm not sure if you know Fitz. She's a race announcer, actually. She does a lot of the races, like the marathon race. She does the Philly race. She does the she did the one in LA recently. So she's the race announcer, her and Rudy. So she's in our tournament too. The two of them are going to be battling it out. That's a big competition that we have going. She just finished chemo. Her last day of chemo was this week. So she's coming back from that and running the race. She's going to put a hurt on Marty Clark.
God bless her. I mean, there's a battle that you want to win.
Yes.
You're not that right, Greg.
That is true.
The stories in our sport are just incredible what people do. It's unbelievable. There's no better sport out there. No better sport, I guarantee you.
No better
You know,
people.
I don't think there's any sport that allows the average or below average runner to be at the same event as Bill Rogers and Bart Yasso and others, and be able to not only toe the line, but actually chat with them before the race and do those things and interact. I mean, we have such a wonderful sport, and it's healthy. It's healthy.
Jacqueline Grew just joined as well. She joined into the Facebook Live event. Hi, Jacqueline. She's one of our members as well. She's a sweetheart.
I remember her win in Boston, the year of that doggone bugger, Rosie.
Yeah.
You know, and Jackie was so graceful.
Yep.
You know, with the whole thing. But talk about someone who was robbed of the moment. Yeah, still drives me nuts.
Yeah, but if you want to learn something about class, that she still to this day handles that with class. You know, she's very.
You're not kidding
about it.
You're not kidding.
We had her on the program a couple of weeks ago, and she was just all class. I love talking to her.
Yep, terrific.
She was second female in 1983. She ran a great race.
And you weren't going to beat Joni that day.
No, Joni was on fire. Was literally on fire.
Well, she burned a lot of people that day. Yes, she did.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Well, Greg, I appreciate you meeting with us and introducing yourself to the Boston Buddies. Again,
well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, if people want to do your virtual race, it's metrohealth.net. With the 5K,
yep.
And if you beat Greg, he's going to donate $1 to the cause, up to $500. So let's all get out there and make him go broke. And then the other race is the Riverbank 25K in October that people can run as well.
Yeah, 25K are unheard of, 15.5 miles. So most people would get a PR in 25K because they've never done a 25K.
Right.
And we're the largest in the country.
There you go. Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Greg. And thank you for your time and have a great day. Thank you, Bart, as always. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Nice to speak with you.
Thank you, guys.
Hear your voice, man.
Hey, stay healthy and test negative.
Yes, that's the deal. Stay safe, stay healthy, everybody.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.